It is setting up webinar for YouTube Live. Well, all right, I'm about to hit record and we are going to be off. All right.
All right, everybody. It's been a little while, but you got Josh and Casey here with remote R&D with Baker AV, and thanks for taking some time to watch this webinar. Casey, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce our special guest.
Today, I am so excited to be sitting with somebody that I go way back with, Mr. Greg Coddington, who's the technical director at Crestron. And today we're going to talk about how Crestron is kind of leading the charge in workplace reentry protocols, and maybe even touch on some neat ways that Crestron has come up with to integrate that work from home life with your actual home life. We are so happy to have you on today, Greg. So first off, I mean, how have you been and what have you been up to?
Well, thanks for having me. So I've been doing pretty well, I guess, as well as everybody has been getting through this particular time in our history with working from home a lot and having my kids schooling from home. That was a bit interesting, but you know, all things considered, things have been kind of moving right along.
That's awesome. Well, bless you on the digital learning. So I know you're about to head into round 2 of that. So good luck with that.
Yeah.
So I want to kick this off. So with companies scrambling to understand and establish these new guidelines for re-entry to their offices, what kind of solutions has Crestron been able to develop during this time period to help enable a safe return to the work environment?
So we have a bunch of different options, really, and things that we've looked at. So I guess kind of just from an overall view prior to COVID, this is from Avixa, where they were kind of looking at the different verticals in the AV business and really where the growth was and how much revenue was being spent and what they were projecting going forward. So you can see conferencing and collaboration, they were really projecting a 3.1% growth. So this is all prior to COVID. So a lot of this is drastically going to change. That one in particular, as well as anything relating to performance, live performance, and entertainment venues, you know, that business has gone down drastically because of social distancing, right? So a lot of things have changed because of this, and we have some technologies that we've had around for a little bit as far as our automation side of things goes, that are really going to kind of make things smoother on that whole return to work for our customers. So one of the things that hasn't changed really is that you know, we still have to be able to meet, right? So that's where this virtual you know, virtual meetings have become really you know, critical in this time. So prior to COVID, there was a real drive for smaller meeting spaces. Huddle rooms were kind of, you know, the flavor of the month, if you will. But now with social distancing, a lot of those smaller meeting spaces that were really only designed to hold, you know, maybe 4 to 6 people aren't really going to be able to be utilized in that way, just because of social distancing. So, you know, first and foremost, one of the things that we're looking at is as far as return to work is safety is going to be paramount, right? So how do we go back to work safely in the existing spaces and kind of get on with our lives as our business lives as much as we can. So so low and zero touch technology solutions are really going to become critical to reduce the risk of potential transmission of virus or any communicable disease that might be on the horizon that we're blissfully unaware of. So what the research that Crestron has done internally has shown that personal device control is going to be something that's going to really drive how the technology is used. So there's going to be a certain group of people that aren't going to want to touch any communal devices within the conference rooms. And a lot of the conference rooms that are designed around Crestron devices are touch-based systems, right? There's a touch panel that sits on the table and you interact with the room using that touch panel. So that's where this low touch and zero touch idea is going to kind of allow you to interact with and control that technology without having to touch those other devices. Also, remote management is going to become something that's really going to be critical for anyone that's managing any of these spaces, right? So there's been staffing changes, obviously. So you have technology managers out there that still have to manage the same number of spaces, but they may not have as the staff that they had prior to COVID, right? So being able to manage these spaces remotely is going to be something that is going to become very, very important. And along those same lines is measuring employee locations throughout the space is going to also become much more critical due to social distancing. So we have some technologies that are going to enable employers to kind of understand better how their rooms are being used and whether or not any social distancing guidelines that they've put in place are being adhered to, and there's a way that they can measure how that social distancing requirement that they've instituted is actually being like I said, adhered to. So all of that kind of rolls into our technology and our technology offerings. So to the point of social distancing, really, that's kind of presenting a new challenge as well as the having UC enabled spaces. So this was something that we were kind of approached by Johns Hopkins because they were trying to figure out how to basically bring the students back into the classroom safely. So they were looking at utilizing UC platform, but some of their rooms weren't UC enabled. So one of the solutions that we came up with was basically a mobile solution that allows them to more easily adapt the fact that their workplace in this sense, the university, is changing, and how those spaces are being used is changing. So we're all going to end up in this blended work from home environment. I started meeting with customers over the past month, or really not even month, so a little less than a month. I've met with people face to face. It's a little strange sitting in a meeting with a mask on or in a conference room with a mask on, but that's what we do. And then you'll see from that slide with Avixa's projections, the UC versus non-UC spaces that whole model is going to just those will reverse, right? You'll have more UC enabled spaces than non-UC enabled spaces going forward. And like I said, you're going to have similar staff and budgets aren't really going to be changing that much to accommodate, or even they could be going down to accommodate any additional technology that is going to be required. And on top of that, all of this has to be done pretty much yesterday, right? Everyone wants to get whatever solution they're looking at deploying, they want to get it done as quickly as possible and get it rolled out so they know what they're doing going forward.
Sure.
So that's kind of the challenge.
Absolutely. What's kind of neat about these circumstances that we find ourselves in right now is, a lot of these technologies were emerging, prior to COVID, but the sense of urgency that was placed behind them once we got into the thick of this pandemic has really forced a lot of interesting innovation, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Crestron's obviously been doing automation for years, right?
Sure.
So a lot of what we initially looked at was kind of leveraging our existing technologies that customers might already have in place. So we have, technology both inside of the rooms as well as outside of the room, right? And some of these simple solutions are things like controlling the system power, presenting wirelessly, managing the spaces inside the room, and then outside the room, using things like our status signs and our scheduling panels and our XIO cloud platform for remote management and maintenance, right? So inside the room, obviously traditional presentation rooms are still going to exist, right? So we've had a wireless presentation device on the market for a number of years now. This allows you to easily, walk into the room and not have to really touch anything. You're able to present wirelessly, either if you're on the campus LAN or corporate network, present wirelessly using Miracast if you're on a Windows-based device, or AirPlay if you're on a Mac OS-based device. Or we have a new feature coming out in our AirMedia product line that allows for Wi-Fi direct connection to the AirMedia. So basically, you're able to walk into the conference room and not have to touch anything in the room, right? Mm-hmm. Another layer on top of that really is adding in the scheduling component. So having that tied in with the room's calendar, whether it's Exchange, Office 365, or G Suite, allows you to in addition to managing or efficiently using your spaces, it allows you to get notifications when like the meeting you schedule is going to end in 5 minutes. So you'll get a little pop-up message so you know that you need to extend that meeting from your personal device, right?
Sure. A little wrap it up button, kind
right,
of,
exactly.
if you will.
Yeah. So you're kind of, what's if there's someone else coming in behind you or anything like that. And then, in addition to that, having the room scheduled, especially now with COVID, you can do things like, have a period in between meetings where that room can be scheduled for cleaning, right? So if you wanted to have someone, your janitorial staff or cleaning staff come in between meetings and wipe down all the surfaces, that can be done as well.
So I want to pause real quick and kind of expand on this touchless environment that you're talking about and kind of jump over to security a little bit. So there's a ton of different ways that people are using to enable and control meetings in these spaces. And there can be some security issues that come along with how those meetings are being started, with the BYOD life that we're living. So can you add to that a little bit and how Crestron is circumnavigating a little bit of those concerns?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we do have a new mobile device control product that is going to be available the beginning of September. So, some of the concerns relating to security and mobile device control are really, there's a couple of different hurdles really that you have to kind of get over to where you can get to a solution that's both secure and something that's really usable for multiple people across any enterprise, right? So the first thing really is the network, right? So all this stuff lives on the network.
Right.
The mobile devices that people bring into their conference rooms, if they work at the company, they might be on the corporate Wi-Fi. If they're guests, they might be on the guest Wi-Fi, right? So a lot of mobile device control is going to rely on, a way for you from your mobile device to connect to any of the AV equipment that is also network based. A lot of the times those two networks are not the same. They could be a physically air gap network where you have your corporate LAN, and then you have your AV LAN, right, where all your AV equipment lives, and there's no connection between the two of them. And it could just be, they could be segregated via virtual LANs, right? So they might reside on the same hardware, but typically there's no pathway between any equipment on the corporate LAN versus or VLAN versus the AV VLAN, right? So once you figure that out, where you sit, if it's a air gap network, you obviously have to then transition that AV equipment over to either the corporate LAN, or come up with another way that all these mobile devices that are going to be brought into the building can connect to your AV equipment, right? So that's the first big hurdle. Once you've gotten that resolved, the next hurdle is really on the security side of things, where you don't want somebody sitting in the parking garage that's still able to reach that Wi-Fi that can still control the conference room, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that, right? You want to be able to control who's able to connect to these systems, and make sure that whoever is controlling the system is sitting in the room and they're part of the meeting and they're the one that should be controlling the system, right?
Right.
So just to step forward a little bit, that's where our mobile device control platform kind of solves some of those problems. So the AV network can still remain the AV network, whether or not it's a VLAN or whether or not it's air gapped. So it's going to use the Bluetooth beaconing that's integrated into our 60 series touch panels. So instead of having to be on any network at all, you just need to have the Bluetooth enabled on your phone, and your phone will detect the touch panel, and you can basically connect to the touch panel and control your room via your mobile device.
Nice.
So here's more or less how it works. So you would download the app. It'll be an iOS app that you would run on your phone, on your iPhone, obviously. You'd launch the app. It will show you which touch panels or which devices you're in close proximity to. So, Bluetooth has a range of about 30 feet. So it might show you, depending on how large the conference rooms are, you might see a couple of different conference rooms around you, right? So you choose the touch panel in the room that you're in, right? On that touch panel, you'll then have a QR code that you will scan with your phone and enter a PIN code. So even if you were to try to connect, stand outside of a meeting room within 30 feet of that touch panel and try to connect that room and basically hijack it and control it, you still wouldn't be able to, because there's still some security challenges that you have to, scan the QR code and put in the PIN code, right? So you can't really control the room unless you're actually in front of the touchscreen.
Does that PIN number change?
Yeah, it'll be a rolling PIN number that will change between, based on meetings.
Got it.
So once you're past that, you scan the QR code, you put in the PIN for the room, you'll then get a mobile optimized user interface. So then you can easily control the elements in the room that you need to. So this is not the same as creating a completely separate user interface for a mobile device, which we've been doing for years and years. This is taking that existing user interface that is on that 60 series touch panel and porting over the controls that you want to have represented on a mobile UI. So you're not going to take every single button you might have on that touch panel that that aren't really relevant for, controlling a meeting or a presentation. You're going to take the controls that are the important ones for the end user to be able to easily connect to the room and present or have their meeting, right? So if there's a dial pad, for an audio teleconferencing system, you would add the dial pad. If there's sources for presentation sources, you would add those sources, right? So this is all done without doing any additional programming. It's all done via configuration, and you're more or less picking and choosing which buttons and features you want to have from your existing user interface represented on your mobile UI.
So this solves a couple of problems then, is what I'm seeing here is people will want to just use their own devices like we were saying. So it helps them with their return to office with regards to their comfort level, but also looks like you can facilitate communication in-house too for support. It looks like IT support can be reached on demand, and reception and concierge. So taking their device and empowering them to facilitate a lot of workflows very simply.
Yeah. So this is all based on if those features were available already on the existing UI, which across a lot of enterprises, there is the ability to, call the reception desk or call support or get information on how to reach support from the existing, lives on the touch panels that they're already there. So that's how we're doing this. We're trying to minimize the impact and cost really from both the on the customer side of things as well as on the integrator side of things. So there's not a whole lot of since there's not programming involved, there's not a huge amount of programming time since it's configuration. You're just picking and choosing buttons more or less. So yeah, so like mobile device control. Sorry, go ahead, Casey.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it sounds like the Nokia room control. It seems pretty easy to get set up, and then once you have those little modules set up, so it can clearly define what can happen in that room. It looks like it's pretty straightforward, and that any user could really feel comfortable walking up and controlling a meeting.
Could this also be applied to that other solution that you showed earlier where you have a flex space, for instance, or the cart solution, and someone could control what content they're pushing to something mobile like that, where they're taking a space that normally wouldn't be a meeting space, but converting it to one? Could they control those units using this platform as well?
So with those types of systems, you wouldn't really need this application.
Okay.
So like with the mobile carts, as an example, if it were a team, one of the Teams variants that's running Microsoft Teams, the simplest solution to control that Teams meeting basically is with my mobile device anyway, using the Teams app.
Just pushing that content to it directly.
Yep, exactly.
Understood.
And then the Teams application also has some features that allow for proximity joining a meeting with the room. So basically, if you had a meeting on your calendar that's on your phone, when you join that meeting from your phone, it will, if you're within that Bluetooth beaconing range of that Teams room system, you'll be able to push that meeting over to the room, and then use that, in this case, cart, for that meeting. So, yeah. So that's kind of a couple of technologies that we're looking at for inside the room. So we've got just to sum up, the wireless presentation, the zero touch leverages the occupancy sensor in the room. So when you walk in the meeting space, the occupancy sensor will detect someone's in the room for that meeting, and it can then turn the display on and then show information either about the meeting or how to connect to that particular room for presentation purposes. And then for more complex rooms, that's kind of where the mobile device control falls in, where you've got an existing touch panel on the table, and you still want to be able to, utilize that room for using those features that it was designed to support, but from your own mobile device. So you don't have to touch the touch screen because they're dirty.
Because who would want to do that right now?
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So a couple of things we have technology-wise outside the room that can be used for this whole post-COVID world, right? So we've had these room availability signs or status signs, and that you can change the colors of them based on whether or not the room is occupied or vacant. Scheduling panels will show you information about the meeting. It's if the room's booked or not. You can easily book that room from your own, again, from your personal device, reserve that room for your particular meeting. And then on the monitoring side of things, we have, our XIO Cloud platform will give you information about knowing what's going on in the room as far as the devices that make up that system. Are they online? Are they offline? For our UC platform, is the camera connected? Is the sound bar connected? Things like that. And then right down to remote help desk support. So someone is operating the room and they're having issues, you can remotely control those rooms just like you are in the room with that touch screen, without pretty much from any place in the world with an internet connection. So,
which is amazing.
So the status signs, they can do pretty much, well, not any color, but close to any color. They're RGB LEDs built into this thing. So what you can do, in addition to your typical red and green for occupied and vacant, for the different meeting types, you could have a third color that would indicate that the meeting is over, but the room is not cleaned yet, right? So you could have a, orange or yellow or pick another color that lets somebody know that, oh, this room's available, but it hasn't been cleaned yet. So we probably want to wait till the cleaning crew gets in there to have wiped everything down before we go into that room. So that's one other way that we can use our existing technology that might already be deployed, is just having that extra little step and additional, color, so someone knows what's going on in that room, so they know that everything needs to be, cleaned up or wiped down.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I thought so. I didn't come up with it. So another feature that we have that will be coming out next year, early next year, is RFID integration into our scheduling touchscreens. So that allows you gives you a couple different, additional benefits, right? So to tag on to the cleaning the room system, example, if the touch panel has an RFID reader, after the room's cleaned, you might have your cleaning staff might be able to scan their badge that will, then log that, the room has been cleaned. It will clear that status out of the room. The sign will go green, and then, it can get recorded that, this room was cleaned. And then since they're using an RFID badge, who cleaned the room? Things like that can then be logged and tracked. In addition to things like having, meeting check-in based on an RFID scan, other things like allowing access to even use the AV equipment in the room if it's something that's being enforced by, management, where they don't want people just walking into the room and congregating in the rooms unless they're authorized to use that space. They can leverage that RFID badge that they probably already have just to get in and out of their building, to do things like that with this additional functionality on the scheduling touch panel.
Pretty neat.
Yeah. This also ties in with the aux sensors in the room as well. So, based on the room occupancy, whether or not there's a meeting in progress, obviously that would show red. But if the room were occupied and maybe the room wasn't booked, it could show another color outside the room. right? So then you would know that, oh, this room is available, but there's people in that meeting space that really shouldn't be. So all of the technology really ties together to kind of give you, a lot of different options for making sure your spaces are being used safely, and efficiently.
I like it.
On the remote management side of things, we have this example that we use a lot. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with DMNVX. So NVX was initially released a few years ago in 2017. 2019, we had about 140,000 or over 140,000 NVX endpoints deployed around the world, right? So that's a whole lot of endpoints. February of 2019, we had our first major firmware upgrade where we added a bunch of features to the NVX platform for free, as well as what we introduced our Pixel Perfect Processing Codec, which gives you visually lossless video from the same hardware. All you had to do was update the firmware, right? So now you're saying, I've got all these NVX endpoints out there. Now I have to go around, got to schedule time to get to that particular job site, and I've got to, touch every single one of these endpoints and update the firmware. So that's where XIO Cloud comes in as far as the remote management side of things goes. So with XIO Cloud, or being a cloud application, I'm able to connect to it, and I'm able to get to any of my NVX endpoints that I'm responsible for managing and update their firmware remotely. Just as simple as picking my room that I want to update and then choosing the firmware, and then I can schedule that for whenever I want to have that happen. So I can easily, update firmware on all these devices from any place in the world, right? So when we had another big firmware release last week where we added AES 67 support for all of our NVX endpoints. Again, with XIO Cloud, I can easily update any NVX endpoint that I have responsibility for managing without having to roll a truck or anything like that. I can schedule it for whenever I need to, whenever it's convenient for my customer.
So
I can
as the
roll it
IT
out.
folks are working remotely, this allows them to be able to enable new features and push out security patches, what have you.
Exactly.
And if they don't have to be at the location centralized, they can be remote, because we know that there are going to be employees on-prem because they're crucial employees that have to be in office, but the IT folks may not necessarily be there. So this seems like a good solution for that.
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes firmware isn't always features, right? It is security patches that sometimes get included in firmware. If there's any vulnerabilities found, that's how we fix those vulnerabilities, is with a firmware update. So being able to do that remotely is going to be, kind of a game changer for the AV side for the AV business, really. A lot of other IT centric hardware, that's kind of been commonplace to be able to do stuff like that, but not so much in the AV world. So,
Absolutely.
So along the lines of the remote of XIO Cloud, we have the remote monitoring. Along the lines of remote management, we also offer remote monitoring and control via XIO Cloud. So you can easily see, the health of all your devices, from a single pane of glass, right? I can change settings on devices remotely. I can do this either on a single device or on a group of devices. However I want to have those devices updated, have their settings updated, I'm able to do that again remotely. Right down to having alerts, and alerts based on a device falling offline, or depending on the type of system it is. If it's one of our UC systems, you can have it trigger an alert if the video camera gets disconnected, or if the main display gets disconnected. You can have all of those alerts triggered based on those events, and then text messages and emails be sent to whoever the responsible party for those meeting spaces is, whether it's, you know, the IT department or you know, an executive assistant or something like that. All that can be done. So if somebody goes into the room to use it, everything is going to work as expected.
Got it.
Then once they're in there, if they need assistance, they can use our remote control feature from XIO Cloud. So this allows, you know, anyone with access to that XIO Cloud account to get into that particular meeting space and control that touch panel just like they were sitting in front of it.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, it definitely makes people feel more comfortable about the investments that they've already put into the technology that's in their office. And while we would love to sit back and say that technology never fails, I mean, things do happen. You get a bad lightning storm and, you know, half of your system's knocked out. Being able to manage that, you know, still in your pajamas, you know, for those of us who are still in our pajamas, no hate, you know, being able to do that from your kitchen table in your pajamas is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, so that gives the whoever's managing these spaces a lot of flexibility in how they're able to do their jobs. Especially if you know, we're looking at really adding more UC enabled spaces and kind of adding more technology without really adding any more people to manage the technology. This
Right.
kind of gives you that leg up to be able to effectively manage all these new spaces that you might have.
That's great.
One last thing about the monitoring side of XIO Cloud. This ties in with our UC platform. So any of our UC platforms that utilize the Hudley camera. So here I'm showing the soundbar, which has the integrated Hudley camera. In combination with our UC engine, allows you to do people counting. So the camera is able to determine, based on what it sees, what is actually a person in a room versus what's a, you know, a cup of coffee, what's a laptop. It's able to determine those, you know, elements that are in the room, and then report a count of people back to the UC engine and back to XIO Cloud. So what this allows you to do is to create basically occupancy thresholds for your different rooms. So when we were talking about the you know, huddle rooms really being able to only accommodate a couple people now, you can have thresholds set for your room types based on how many number of people it can safely have in it based on social distancing requirements. So you might have a conference room that can hold 4 people, right, as an example. You could create that threshold, and then if that threshold is exceeded, it can then send an alert to whoever needs to be alerted that the social distancing and room threshold has been exceeded for this room, and then they can address that alert accordingly.
Now, since that's using a video image to count those people, where is that data stored? Is that still considered anonymous? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's not really stored anywhere.
Okay.
So it's using basically when you're in a meeting, the camera is going to be on, and it's going to count. It's going to then look at the number of people in the space.
Got it.
And then it'll report that information into XIO Cloud. It's using the artificial intelligence that's built into that Hudley IQ camera to get that information.
Got it.
So yeah, so we can do a whole lot with the XIO Cloud platform now, specifically with you know, all these newer UC enabled spaces. So speaking of UC, since that's kind of driving everything nowadays, right? I mean,
Right.
and you even like when I think back to the beginning of this, internally at Crestron, we use Teams. So we've been doing lots of Teams video meetings, for a while now. But when we would have outside meetings, in the beginning, there were very few people that would turn their video on, right? Internally at Crestron, there was we did have you more or less had to turn your video on, right? And I think a lot of companies operate that way. But when we would have outside meetings, like I said, there are a lot of people that wouldn't turn their video on. That seems to have been, as more people got more comfortable with using video for their meetings, now pretty much everyone is, it's more commonplace where you join a meeting and everyone's camera is on. So,
Yeah.
So I think UC is really driving, is going to be a huge driver for our market going forward. So we've got technology that can be used across a bunch of different room types or for different customers. So native UC spaces, those are customers that are really have already, they're already determined we're using Zoom or we're using Teams. We're using this one platform and we're all in on that platform. Versus a BYOD, those are more customers that, they might use Teams or Zoom or whatever for, say, 75% or 80% of their meetings, but every now and again they've got to do, a WebEx, or they might have to do a GoToMeeting or something like that. So BYOD might be the better solution there. Whereas we have a product that allows you to have the best of both worlds in the case that it gives you native Teams or native Zoom in addition to BYOD support. So that's going to allow you to maximize the usage for those room types that have the need to support native UC as well as BYOD going forward. So having that flexibility is going to be important, since you still might be having meetings in that video enabled room, but there's going to be more participants that might be joining remotely than there are going to be joining in person in that space, right? So having the best solution available and utilizing the more of a room solution rather than a desktop solution is going to give the remote participants the best meeting experience possible. So that's where all of our products kind of really gel together to give that remote user the best meeting experience. Because in the room, the speaker sounds great, the video looks great. It's really the remote participant that gets the benefit of the hardware in most cases.
Right. So let's talk about those remote participants for a minute, shall we?
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure that just about anybody these days can relate to some of the pain points that we've all been experiencing with being thrust into that work from home environment. I know I have. Raise your hand out there if you've had a little one pop in on a meeting unexpectedly. Definitely happened.
That's why I locked the door.
Yeah, thanks to everybody out there for being so understanding. So I saw the other day where Crestron has come up with some ideas on how you can create a more office-like environment to try to mitigate some of those unexpected challenges. Can you share some of those with us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of the things that people have been doing really at Crestron is utilizing some
Mm-hmm.
things like our room availability signs, and using using those room availability signs outside your home office, so somebody knows that if the light's red, you're on a call. If the light's green, you can come in.
Like a recording studio, right?
Yeah, exactly. So people have been doing things like that, just to kind of prevent some of that intrusions from happening. Although most of the time it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, so that's one way that people have been using our technology to more or less have a better work from home experience. We also, you know, since we have a lot of product depth as far as audio and video products and control, there has been people using our audio products to kind of do some, you know, pseudo sound masking. So, you know, if they have speakers outside of their office, they might, you know, have white noise playing through those speakers. So it's more, you know, preventing some of the, you know, audible intrusions into the call that
We've
might
all heard
be going on
lawn
outside the
mowers
room.
recently in meetings. So
Yeah.
Exactly. Lawn mowers, leaf blowers.
yeah,
You probably still hear those though.
Finding Dory, whatever.
if they're right outside your window.
what about quality? Because people have you know, when there's a big difference between sitting in a meeting room and having professional gear, and you know, sitting on a very cheaply made system. Is there anything Crestron is offering to kind of standardize that work from home and then work in office that can help have the same user experience?
Yeah. So we have a couple of products that are work from home related. The product on the left is going to be released the end of next month. It's a Mercury Mini. If you're familiar with the Mercury, this is a new Mercury device. It's 40% smaller than the existing Mercury. Wow. It is, you know, not very big. It's really designed for smaller meeting spaces. So it's perfect for a work from home environment. It can, you know, you can also use it in a work from home environment as a audio device for your connected laptop. So you can connect your laptop to it and use, you know, have it speaker be the speaker for, you know, for the audio coming from your laptop. In addition to doing, you know, whatever, if you're doing Teams, video, Teams audio, or Zoom calls. So that's one thing that we have that has a place in a work from home environment, but can also be repurposed, you know, into the office space in the future. So that's one of the benefits to kind of go back to the beginning where we looked. There was the Johns Hopkins University and their mobile carts. You know, ideally they wanted to have all those rooms be UC enabled, right? But it just wasn't feasible based on the timeline. So that's where the mobile carts come in. So they're able to use those mobile carts, you know, as long as they need to, as long as social distancing is a thing that we need to be aware of. And then in the future, they're able to then take that same exact hardware and deploy it in a room. So there's really no sunk cost there related to that equipment spend, because it can be repurposed. Same thing with this Mercury Mini. So I could have this Mercury Mini in my home office, and then, you know, when I start going back to the office more frequently, I may want to have this, you know, be moved into my office at work, or be moved into a huddle room at work, where it can be used in a larger space where I can have people come in to the office and meet with me in person in those spaces, and then bring in remote participants as well. So that's the Mercury Mini that we're excited about coming out the end of next month. And then alongside of it is a Zoom room solution that is what we call Crestron Home Time. So it's a Zoom room solution that's paired with a Logitech Meetup camera. It's designed to be controlled via one of our handheld remote controls that you would typically have, you know, in your living room or your family room. You know, everyone's been doing these Zoom calls with family and friends, like on the weekends, because, you know, your kids can't go and see their grandparents now because they're at risk, right? So even if there weren't any distance limitations there, you know, now there's a risk of transmitting something to, you know, people that are in an at-risk category, like older people being grandparents. So everyone's been doing Zoom meetings, right, with their family and friends. So, but a lot of those experiences, to your point, Josh, you know, using a webcam a lot of times doesn't give you as good of a feel, right, or a good of experience. So using that Logitech camera, that meetup camera gives you, pan, tilt, zoom camera, and you can control that all of that meeting from your handheld remote, just like you're sitting there on your couch, watching Netflix. You can have a Zoom meeting with your family sitting on the couch next to you.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Converts your family room into a boardroom.
Right. Yeah. So we've got some definite work from home solutions that can easily be redeployed when they're needed to be back into the work environment.
Excellent. So
one last thing that I wanted to mention in relation to our Flex R series carts, it all goes back to UC, right? So you have to have these UC enabled spaces, and now to have meetings with a larger group of people, you might not have a room where you can actually be in that room with that number of people because of social distancing, right? So what these Flex carts allow you to do is basically turn any space into a UC enabled space. You roll the cart into the room as long as there's power and network. The power and network connections are both on cable retractors. So you pull out the cables out of the cable retractors, plug them into the network and power, and then you can have your Zoom or Teams meeting or BYOD meeting, whatever the case may be, in whatever space is the most appropriate. And then, you might have that meeting in your break room at, 10 a.m. And then you might need that same cart or same meeting in another room that doesn't have UC, at 1 p.m. So you just disconnect it, or even 10:15, right?
Yeah.
Whenever it's done, you disconnect it, you roll it down the hall and plug it in. So it's a pretty simple solution that allows you to bring UC wherever it's needed.
And is that mobile cart, does that have a adjustable height, if you had lower sitting furniture, or is it one standard height?
There is some adjustability. I'm not entirely sure how much there is to it, but not
about 20 feet, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of designed to be rolled up to, near a table. So that's going to be the best application for it.
Perfect. Yeah, I love having options, and especially these days, a meeting space is kind of wherever you are in the office that makes you feel the most comfortable. So being able to maintain a quality system literally anywhere in the office, I think is great.
Yeah, that is true. So yeah, some other technology we have that, as far as just zero touch type technology, is relating to everyone's favorite personal device, Alexa. So with Alexa for Business, you're able to take that Alexa device, put that in a conference room, or any even UC enabled room like a Zoom room, and control that room. You can say, Alexa, start my meeting, and it'll launch your Zoom meeting for you.
Like an out of the box, from Amazon Alexa device.
Yep. Yeah, you have to have an Amazon Alexa for Business account. It's a different account.
Okay.
That you need for that type of.
That's probably a good idea.
Integration.
You don't want your shopping list getting pushed to the conference.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I don't need people to know how many bottles of elderberry gummies I'm ordering right now.
That they just were delivered.
Why does he keep buying spatulas? I don't.
I'm making a lot of eggs.
Yeah, so that's a good solution for zero touch meeting room. We've been doing voice control for a while with Alexa, in the home, right? Turn your lights on, adjusting the temperature, turning your fan on, things like that, turning your TV on. Now moving that into the enterprise environment gives you some flexibility in that zero touch realm for however long that's a thing. I'm completely fine with touching stuff and just immediately, hand sanitizing.
Sure.
But that's just me.
Yep. Well, it's good. Again, we talk a lot about flexibility and being able to be flexible and not forcing someone into one very specific decision.
Yeah.
I think it's really important right now because comfortable right now is subjective. It's whatever one person feels, and being able to create an environment that has a lot of that flexibility that we talked about today, so you can kind of meet all those points for each individual, I think is key.
Agreed.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
It's great seeing you.
Great seeing you guys again via video.
We always appreciate our conversations with you. So thanks for coming on. And, as always, everybody out there, you can follow us and Facebook at Baker Audiovisual, and on Twitter at Baker Audio, and on Twitter it's at Crestron, right? I think it's at Crestron Electronic.
I'm embarrassed. I don't know.
Electronic. And wanted to give a little shout out to my AV and the AM peeps out there. How's everybody doing? But thanks so much for joining us, and take care. Be good to each other.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye. Thanks.